everyone, it's time for us to go and take a look at the Samsung Galaxy S24 Plus and compare it against the iPhone 14 Pro Max and see which particular phone is a better one for you. Now, I will definitely tell you there's a lot of advantages between both these devices. There really isn't one that I look at and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is the best one between both. But if I'm going to have to recommend one, there are lots of reasons why the Galaxy S24 Plus might be more of a flagship phone than the iPhone 14 Pro Max, and we'll talk about that throughout this video. Now, if you want to pick up either one of these phones during the whole duration of this video, you can get them linked down in the description below, and you can help support the channel at the same time. Now, starting off with the outside of both these phones, the iPhone 14 Pro Max came out back in 2022, and on the front of that phone, you were getting a 6.7-inch LTPO Super Retina XDR OLED display. It was a pretty good panel. It was 120Hz, 1290p, and it's still a pretty good looking display. You were getting that dynamic island, which again is a really nice thing to have, and overall for the most part, I think it's a pretty good looking display for the most part. I love having these types of phones that look really good for a long duration of time, and within this particular device, it is still it's basically still going to be a very good looking phone for a long period of time, which is something I love seeing. So that in of itself is a very cool thing going on for this particular device. Now on the Galaxy S24 Plus, you are getting basically the same size display, so it still is a 6.7-inch dynamic LTPO AMOLED display. It's 1440p, and I would probably argue this is a better panel than the iPhone 14 Pro Max. So you're getting 2600 nits of peak brightness on this phone versus 2000 nits on the iPhone 14 Pro Max, and you're also still maintaining 120Hz, and it is a high resolution display as well at 1440p, so that could be a pretty big advantage for some people, but I will tell you between both, it's not even really the biggest deal in the world, and you're still getting very good panels between both. But do keep in mind the iPhone 14 Pro Max is probably going to be giving you not maybe as good of a panel as the Galaxy S24 Plus, all things considered. They're both, funny enough, they're both like flat-sided phones nowadays, which is very interesting. Before they were not. Before they were, curved on the S24 Plus and even curved on the iPhones many years ago. But Apple started putting flat sides on their iPhones, and now Samsung is doing the same thing. I actually like this approach. I think the flat-sided phones feel much more modern, and I feel like you end up, like not touching the screen by accident too many times, and I do think it's cheaper for the manufacturers to do something like this, so that is something I actually prefer. On the bottom of both these phones, they both have the charging ports. The iPhone 14 Pro Max had the Lightning port, and the S24 Plus has the USB-C port. This is probably going to be another big thing I'm going to start saying soon, but Lightning, because Apple already changed it, could start being a disadvantage. Maybe not this year, but maybe next year with phones that have Lightning. You might notice a lot of people starting to say, well, this phone has Lightning, USB-C is a lot better, and that might be the approach a lot more people are going to go down, in my opinion, rather than Lightning. On the backside, you are getting frosted glass backs on both these phones, which is super nice to have. You do have the LiDAR sensor on the 14 Pro Max, which is nice. You're getting wireless charging on both, reverse wireless charging on both as well. And with the iPhone 14 Pro Max, you're getting things like that MagSafe capability, which is great. But the Samsung Galaxy S24 Plus is giving you reverse wireless charging. So this in and of itself is another pretty big advantage that I look at something like the S24 Plus as having a little bit more of a flagship experience than the iPhone 14 Pro Max. I still feel like Apple, the 14 Pro Max is still great and everything, but I still feel like Apple could be doing a little bit of a better job when it comes down to their whole entire experience, when it comes down to their whole entire, that side of things when it comes down to it. So on the exterior of this particular device, I still think it's a very good phone on both of them, but I would probably argue that the Galaxy S24 Plus might be somewhat more of a flagship performing phone on the outside than the iPhone 14 Pro Max, if that makes any sense to anyone. So from that side, that kind of covers it up there. Now moving on to some other sides of this phone, particularly with the camera side, I would say that the camera on this phone is very good on both these devices. So with the iPhone 14 Pro Max, you're getting a 48 megapixel wide-angle lens, 12 megapixel telephoto lens, and then a 12 megapixel ultra-wide camera. With the Galaxy S24 Plus, you're getting a 50 megapixel wide, 10 megapixel telephoto, and then a 12 megapixel ultra-wide camera. Then you have 12 megapixel wide-angle lenses on the front of both these phones. The thing I would tell you on both these devices is that they're both very good cameras, right? You can't really go wrong with either one, but there might be some advantages for one camera over the other one. So let me explain. So for one, you can do 4K at 60 on the fronts and the back of both these phones, which is really nice to have. I love being able to just throw in 4K, videos if I really need to anywhere. And both these phones are going to be giving you that type of capability, which is really nice. The only thing is that with both of these devices, you are getting kind of one thing on one that you're not really getting on the other. So with the iPhone 14 Pro Max, in the stock camera app, it's pretty good, but they use that same type of camera in social media applications as well. So in Snapchat and Instagram and TikTok and Facebook and whatever other app you're going to use, you are probably going to be getting the same type of camera experience on those ones as you would inside of the iPhone 14 Pro Max's main camera. With the S24 Plus, this may not be the case. In social media apps, it's not going to be as great, even though Samsung did say it's going to be the same. I still think it's not really as good, but I will tell you, in the stock camera app, you are going to be getting an overall better experience in that camera than the iPhone 14 Pro Max. There's just so many more features built in inside of the S24 Plus camera, but also you have the 8K video you can film in on the Galaxy S24 Plus. This is a very cool feature and a really big asset for that type of phone. So if I'm about to go through and buy some sort of new device, I definitely want it to have the best camera I can. And it's almost like you're getting one on one phone and not the other one on the other. So I'll probably tell you, in my particular opinion, both phones are great, but the S24 Plus's camera might be the overall better one when it comes down to it. So that kind of covers it up from that side too. Now, in terms of the overall software experience, we are comparing One UI versus iOS, so there's always going to be slight differences between both. So that's always just one thing to keep in mind. But I will tell you, when it comes down to this particular device, I'll say the software longevity on both is going to be amazing. You're going to be getting very long-lasting phones on both these devices, which is something I love seeing. So it's not like you're going to feel like you have like a super old, outdated phone on either one, which is something I love having on both these phones. The only problem I would probably say between both these devices is that, for one, with the iPhone 14 Pro Max, it may not last as long as the S24 Plus. The S24 Plus is rumored to be giving you 7 years of software updates, which is absolutely insane. So that could be probably a problem for some people, but I don't even think it's really that big of a problem, probably for a lot of people, who knows. But keep that in mind. With the S24 Plus, definitely this is going to be a phone that's going to last longer, maybe than the iPhone 14 Pro Max. But the 14 Pro Max is still going to be here for quite a bit of time, and there's not really that much to complain about with that particular phone either, if I'm being honest. Now, from a performance side, the iPhone 14 Pro Max is giving you that Apple A16 Bionic chip inside of it with 6GB of RAM, where the Galaxy S24 Plus is giving you that Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 chipset inside with 12GB of RAM. So you are getting like twice the amount of RAM inside of the Galaxy S24 Plus than the iPhone 14 Pro Max. But there's a couple things I'll tell you, to that. The performance of both these phones is going to be great, but you're probably going to say, I would probably say that the iPhone 14 Pro Max's performance is going to be very good. That's something I like a lot about that particular device, but I would probably say that the Galaxy S24 Plus's overall performance might actually be better. You have to keep in mind that with phones like the Galaxy S24 Plus, these types of devices are probably going to be giving you, the overall better capability, because you can install your own applications and emulators and all those things. That might be one thing to keep in mind, but I think the iPhone 14 Pro Max is a very good performing device, and I do like that phone a lot. So to kind of sum up this whole entire video, what I'll definitely tell you is you can't really go wrong with either one of these devices. I think they're both very solid, and they're both very solid choices. If I were to pick up one, if it wasn't an iOS versus Android thing, I think the S24 Plus probably is the one that has more features built inside of it than something like the iPhone 14 Pro Max, if I'm being honest. But the 14 Pro Max is older. You can probably buy it cheaper than the S24 Plus right now. So that might be something to kind of keep in mind with that particular device. But I still think both these phones are great, and there's not really that much to hate on either one. They're both very good, and you can't really go wrong with either one of these phones. So from that side, that kind of covers it up here. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.